lasst und können.
This program will demonstrate recommended operating techniques for Caterpillar off-highway trucks. The tape is divided into 7 segments for easy viewing: safety, the walk-around inspection, the operator's compartment and startup, setting the transmission control, proper braking and retarding, loading, traveling, and dumping, and shutting the machine down. We need to remind you that this tape is not intended to replace the machine operator's manual, so read it thoroughly for additional information on maintenance, safety, and operating practices. Safety. Before we talk about the machine and how it works, let's address one of the most important aspects of running any machine: safety. Most accidents involving machine operation are caused by failure to observe basic safety rules and precautions. As an operator, you must be alert for potential hazards. An accident can often be avoided by recognizing these potentially hazardous situations before an accident occurs. Before you operate any machine, you should read and understand the safety and operating information provided in the Operation and Maintenance Manual. Safety precautions and warnings are provided in the manual and at various locations on the machine. Be sure to identify and understand these symbols before you start the machine. Every possible circumstance that might involve a potential hazard cannot be anticipated. The warnings in the operator's manual and on the machine are therefore not all-inclusive. If a tool, procedure, work method, or operating technique not specifically recommended by Caterpillar is used, you must be satisfied that it is safe for you and others. The walk-around inspection. Before climbing into the machine, do a complete visual walk-around. First, check the cooling system for leaks and trash buildup. Also check for leaks in the engine compartment and on the ground. Next, examine the tires for cuts, proper air pressure, and loose lug nuts. Inspect the hoist converter and hydraulic tank oil level for the braking system. Watch for leaks and be sure levels are proper. At the rear of the machine, check the differential and final drive for leaks. Also look for any cracks in the frame. Be sure the fuel tank is full and there are no leaks. Climb on the service platform to finish your inspection, and be sure that anytime you climb on the machine you maintain 3 points of contact at all times. On the service platform, check the steering hydraulic tank oil level and report any leakage. Also check the engine oil level while up here. The oil level should be in the safe starting range on the engine stopped side of the dipstick. Finally, check the aftercooler coolant and the engine coolant levels. The coolant level should be maintained above the level indicator plate in the bottom of the fill pipe. Operator's compartment, startups. Before you enter the cab, clean the windows and mirrors for good visibility. After you enter the cab, adjust the seat and buckle the seatbelt. It takes just a couple of minutes to get familiar with the operating controls. They're laid out so you can operate the truck with a minimum of effort. The transmission shifter is on a console to your right. The parking brake switch is here too. On the floor in front of you are 2 pedals. The right one is for the engine throttle and the left for the service brake. On the steering column are 2 more parts of the braking system. To the right is the service brake retarder lever. It's the one you use most often to slow or stop the truck. To the left is the secondary brake lever. It's a reserve brake. The hoist lever is to the left beside the seat. Take a little time to get familiar with these controls. Before starting the engine, check the electronic monitoring system. To do this, turn the electrical disconnect switch to the on position. It's located on the left side behind the seat. Next, turn the engine key to the on position. In the center of the dash is a toggle switch. Lift it up and hold it. All the lights on the EMS panel should come on. If they don't, refer to the operator's manual for further instructions. The EMS provides 3 levels of warning. At first level, only the panel fault indicator will flash. This level of warning requires operator awareness. This may include low fuel, the start of an electrical problem, or the parking brake is still on. At the second level of warning, the panel fault light will come on as well as the flashing red warning light. This indicates that you should change your machine operation to reduce excessive temperature in the cooling system, converter-retarder system, or it could mean a plugged or dirty transmission filter. Immediately move the machine to a safe area, properly shut it down, and report the problem. At the third level of warning, the panel light is on and the red warning light is flashing. In addition, an audible alarm is sounded. Further operation will cause immediate component failure. At this level, there could be a loss of engine or brake pressure or no coolant flow to the engine. Once again, bring the machine to a safe stop, shut it off, and report the problem. Once the EMS lights are working properly, start the engine by turning the key all the way to the right. As you turn the key, you can hear the supplemental steering system checking itself. There are several systems that should be checked before you go to work, and be sure that the area is completely clear and safe before you test the machine. The first is the secondary brake system. Once the air system reaches the maximum operating pressure, pull the secondary brake lever all the way down. Next, place the transmission lever in first gear and release the parking brake. Now, accelerate the engine. Then note the RPM just as the truck begins to move. Do this check daily. If you can move the machine while the brake is depressed at 1200 RPMs or less, be sure and report it. The system needs to be checked and necessary repairs made. If your machine is equipped with an automatic electronic traction aid, or ADA as it's sometimes called, you need to test the system before you put the truck to work. First, find a clear level area for your machine to be driven in a complete circle. Turn the steering wheel all the way to the left. Now, with the engine at low idle, drive the machine in a complete circle. While continuing the turn, lift the guard over the ADA test switch and move the switch to the on position. The machine will gradually come to a stop. The right brakes will then release, and the truck will pick up speed. This sequence will repeat as you continue to drive in the circle. If it doesn't, report it to your supervisor. Another system that should be checked before you start to work is the supplemental steering system. An electrically powered pump supplies hydraulic oil for steering in the event normal steering is unavailable. The switch on the left side of the dash should always be in the auto position during operation. A sensing system will automatically provide supplemental steering if normal steering hydraulic flow is interrupted. The supplemental steering light will alert you whenever the system is activated. Move the switch to the manual position to test the system or when towing the machine when the engine is stopped. As stated earlier, you'll hear the electric supplemental steering motor briefly when you move the engine start switch from off to on. That's the system testing itself. Move the switch to the automatic position for all normal operations. Again, use the manual position only for towing the machine with the engine stopped. Also, if the machine has to be towed, your machine has a brake retraction switch on the right side of the dash. This releases the brake. Simply lift the switch and hold it for 15 to 20 seconds. On the left side of the dash is the front brake switch-out selector. When the switch is in the on position, the front brakes are part of the pedal-activated service brake system. Normally, keep the selector in the on position. In the off position, the front brakes will not engage when you press the service brake. Only the rear wheel brakes will be applied when the pedal is depressed. It's recommended that you do not use the service brakes for retarding on long, steep grades. Overheating may occur, causing reduced service life of the brake components. Instead, use the retarders. Setting the transmission control. To move the truck, either forward or reverse, be sure the parking brake is released. Then move the shifter out of the neutral detent. Your machine has 7 forward speeds and 1 reverse speed. Earlier models may have a different transmission arrangement, but shifting will still be automatic. You select the top forward speed. As the engine is accelerated and ground speed increases, the transmission automatically upshifts. Upshifting will continue until the ground speed matches the selected operating range. Moving the selector to a higher gear when the truck is in motion will not force an upshift. Upshifting is governed by ground speed. Likewise, selecting a lower gear will not force a downshift. A downshift inhibitor assures that both ground speed and engine speed are low enough to permit shifting to a lower gear. The downshift inhibitor prevents engine overspeed if the selector is accidentally moved into a lower gear. Engagement of the service brake, retarder, or additional load on the engine will lower ground speed and engine RPM, so downshifting is automatic. The most often asked question about using this transmission is what speed should be selected when driving down long grades. As a rule, and it's a rule that's subject to a lot of job site variables, go down a grade in the same gear that you went up the grade. As you begin up a grade, the transmission will downshift automatically due to loss of ground speed and the increased load on the engine. The number of downshifts depends on the length and angle of the grade. For example, the transmission may have shifted down to third gear by the time the truck has reached the top of the grade. So it's third gear up the hill and then third gear down the hill. On the return run, move the shifter to third speed, or if you're returning empty, go one speed up to fourth gear. Now the transmission will not upshift past the selected top speed. Applying the retarder will keep ground speed and engine RPM where you want them. One more note about the transmission. The electronic transmission control prevents shifting between forward and reverse gears while the machine is moving over 3 miles per hour. So stop the truck and bring the engine RPM to low idle before changing direction. This will ensure proper performance and prolong service life. Proper braking and retarding. Another important operating technique is knowing how to use the brake systems. Cat truck brakes are fade-resistant and adjustment-free. They offer immediate and consistent speed control. The braking system has 4 main parts. First, there's the pedal-activated service brake. Second, the service brake retarder. Next is the secondary brake. And finally, the parking brake. Also in the cab is the brake oil temperature gauge. It should be used to monitor the buildup of heat in the brakes. The crosshatch pattern indicates the normal operating range. This cutaway of a Cat truck brake will help you understand how the brake systems work. The discs and plates are made of wear-resistant material and are cooled by a constant flow of oil. It's a dual-piston brake. The service and retarding brakes use the same piston and are air-over-oil activated. The secondary and parking brakes share the other piston and are spring-applied and oil-released. The 769, 773, and 777 have oil-cooled sealed brakes on the rear and caliper disc brakes on the front. You'll get the best speed control by using the retarders for most normal braking situations. This may be contrary to what you're used to doing, but with a little practice you'll soon see the benefits of the retarder. Remember, the retarder and service brake are part of the same system. The retarding system is a true brake retarder. It works by activating the rear oil disc brakes. For the operator, it's easier to modulate than the pedal-activated service brake. The retarder control applies about 80% of maximum air pressure to the brakes. The reduced pressure produces better brake modulation and reduces the chance of wheel lockup on steep grades or slippery surfaces. To engage the retarder, pull the lever down. The farther down the lever is pulled, the more the rear brakes are applied. The lever stays in the position you set. The retarder light on the instrument console comes on when the retarder is engaged. There's plenty of braking force, enough to bring a loaded truck to a complete stop. But the value of the brake retarder is most apparent when driving down long grades. Use the retarder to achieve the ground speed and engine speed that are most efficient. You should keep the engine speed between 1,700 and 2,000 RPMs. This engine speed will provide the oil flow needed to cool the brakes. Applying more brake retarder lowers the RPM. Releasing the retarder raises RPM. The ground speed on grades is usually determined by the truck's braking capability. Because Cat truck brakes are oil-cooled and fade-resistant, higher ground speeds are possible. Speed charts found in spec sheets will help you determine downhill speeds. Here's how to read the chart. First, find the appropriate effective grade line. Here it's 15%. Then follow the grade line back to the gross vehicle weight. Let's say it's 300,000 pounds or 136,000 kilograms. Draw a horizontal line through the point where the lines intersect. The intersection of the horizontal line and the brake performance curve indicates the transmission speed, and reading down gives you the ground speed you should maintain. An occasional adjustment with the retarder lever will keep the engine speed and ground speed within the selected ranges. Sometimes operators ask, Can't I do the same thing with the pedal-activated service brake? After all, it's the same braking system. That's true, but the retarder brake is much easier to modulate. The brake air pressure is lower, and the lever stays where you put it. Plus, brake oil cooling is increased when the retarder is engaged. Also remember, the 769, 773, and 777 have air-cooled front disc brakes, and with the switch out in the on position, they're in the service brake system. Prolonged engagement of the front service brake on a long downhill grade, for example, will create excessive heat which could damage the brakes. So it's recommended that you don't use the service brake for retarding. Plus, if the front wheels lock up, steering could be affected. So, use the retarder brake to reduce ground speed or stop the truck. You can still depress the service brake pedal when you want the extra stopping force of four-wheel braking. Or in slick road conditions, use of the service brake pedal helps spread the braking capacity over four wheels rather than two. In this instance, keep the retarder control set at the desired retarding level and lightly apply the service brakes, not for long periods, just when balanced braking is needed. 2 quick reminders about the retarder. First, keep the engine speed between 1700 and 2000 RPM when the retarder is activated for long periods. The flow of cooling oil depends on adequate engine speed. Check the brake oil temperature gauge occasionally to be sure that the indicator is in the normal operating range. Second, don't accelerate while using the retarder. Be sure to release the retarder when you go back to the accelerator pedal. The secondary brake is a reserve brake. Use it to stop the truck only when there is low air pressure in the service and retarder brake system. In this situation, the truck has reduced service braking force. A buzzer and warning light will alert you to a low air condition. The secondary brake provides immediate, modulated response at all four wheels regardless of the brake switch-out position. The lever is spring-loaded so it returns to the off position when it's released. The secondary brake also includes an automatic actuation mode. The secondary brake will apply automatically if air pressure is lost in the secondary brake air tank or if brake retraction oil pressure is lost due to a hydraulic line failure. If you're stopped on the haul road with a brake oil pressure failure, you can drive through the rear brake in first gear, but just for a short distance to move the machine off the road. Or you can release the secondary brake by switching on the brake retraction motor. It will provide brake hydraulic pressure so the truck can be driven or towed to a repair area. The switch is spring-loaded. Once the system is pressurized, let off the switch to avoid overheating the motor. The parking brake, the final part of the braking system, uses the same rear spring-applied brakes as the secondary system. Actuation of the parking brake is through an on-off air switch on the transmission console. A light on the dash shows when this brake is engaged. Engage the parking brake to hold the truck whenever it will be stopped for long periods or whenever you leave the truck. You should also engage the parking brake and place the transmission selector in neutral when waiting to be loaded or to dump. Don't use the retarder to hold the truck for a long time. It's not designed for that. However, there's one exception. You can apply the retarder when the parking brake is engaged to help with brake cooling on the 777. In this condition, brake oil is routed through another cooler when the retarder is engaged. So if the brake oil temperature gauge indicates overheating, pull the retarder lever down until the temperature drops. Remember, this only applies to the 777. We've spent a lot of time looking at the 4 brake systems on Cat trucks, but it's an important topic, one you need to understand to get the best productivity and to prolong the life of the brakes. Loading, traveling, and dumping. Techniques like positioning the truck for loading or for dumping material vary depending on the types of loading equipment and the job layout, so these techniques may not apply to your application but are typical of most work areas. When you're entering the load area, watch for other traffic. In most cases, the loader operator will be ready to spot the truck. Once all traffic is clear, back your truck directly under the hinge pins of the loader. He'll signal when you're back near the pile. Be sure your wheels are straight and not articulated. Place the gear selector in neutral and set the parking brake. After you're loaded, check all traffic and pull away. Obviously, these trucks have wide bodies and it's not always easy to judge the clearance on the right side, especially if you're just learning to operate an off-highway truck. On the 769, 773, and 777, you are sitting directly over the left tire. This is an ideal spot to judge where the tires are in relation to the haul road. The right side mirror will show you the position of the right rear tire. Be sure the mirror is adjusted so you can see clearly. It's especially useful when backing the truck. When you reach the dump area, again check for additional traffic and back the truck close to the berm before you dump. Once you're in position and your wheels are straight, put the gear selector in neutral and set the parking brake. Next, lift the dump lever to dump the load. You may have to pull forward a little as the load is dumped. However, do not pull away from the dump area until the body is completely down. A body down indicator will come into view when the body is completely down. Shutting the machine down. It's been a good day. Shutting the machine down at the end of the day is simple, but it's also very important. First, park the truck on level ground, put the gear selection lever in neutral, and set the parking brake. Let the machine idle for about 5 minutes to cool down. This is a good time to do your paperwork or cleaning of the cab. Then simply turn the key to the off position. Next, shut off the main electrical disconnect switch and remove the key. Climb down, and again remember to use 3 points of contact at all times. Next, do one final check of all the systems, and be sure to report anything wrong or unusual. Being a successful truck operator requires understanding more than just the controls in the cab. You should also know the basics of systems operation, so you'll get all the productivity the truck was designed to give. Follow the tips outlined in this tape and thoroughly read the operation and maintenance guide for additional operating and safety information. That's it. Drive home safely. We want you back tomorrow.